is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
I tell people, whether you go to the fastest paced team in the country or the slowest paced team in the country, all the skills that we teach you, you're going to have to know anyways. We just like to do it at a bit of a faster pace.
Ben Veshi is the basketball operations director and head boys post-grad coach at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia. Before taking on the title of operations director, Ben coached the boys high school varsity team at Hargrave, leading the team to 4 straight VISAA Elite Eight appearances and setting a modern school record for wins with 26 in a season in 2016-17. Prior to joining Hargrave, Ben held the position of assistant boys and girls varsity basketball coach at Marianapolis Preparatory School, and 1 year later was the assistant men's basketball coach at Catawba College, where he had been a 4-year letter winner in men's basketball. Coaches, are you looking to get a shooting machine for your team, but don't have a lot of budget left? This month, our friends at Dr. Dish are making a shooting machine purchase more affordable than ever. Secure your own Dr. Dish CT Plus for as low as $3,900 down when using Dr. Dish's Buy Now, Pay Later payment plan options. These plans are for schools only and have 0 interest, no monthly payments, and no hidden fees. Take advantage now while supplies last. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Those are some great deals, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Todd Kowalczyk, head basketball coach at the University of Toledo. You're listening to the Hoopheads podcast.
Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. For a limited time, Fast Model is offering Hoopheads listeners 15% off Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Just use the code HHP15 at checkout to grab your discount, and you'll be on your way to more efficient game prep and improved communication with your team. Fast Model also has new coaching content every week on its blog, plus play and drill diagrams on its Playbank. Check out the links in the show notes for more. Fast Model Sports is the best in basketball. Have a notebook handy as you listen to this episode with Ben Veshi, basketball operations director and head boys post-grad coach at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here without my co-host Jason Sunkle tonight, but I am pleased to be joined by Ben Veshi, the head basketball coach of the post-grad program at Hargrave Military Academy. Ben, welcome to the Hoopheads pod.
Mike, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on. Looking forward to diving into all the things that you've been able to do in your career. Let's start by going back in time to when you were a kid. Tell me about your first experiences with the game of basketball. How'd you get introduced to it? How'd you fall in love with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great one to start off with. I'm from Massachusetts originally. I grew up basically, if you're looking at the tri-state area where Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island all intersect, I was just on the Massachusetts side of that border. For as long as I can remember, a ball's been in my hands. My dad was actually a hockey guy growing up, but he couldn't really get me on skates. But my grandfather, he paved a little patch in the backyard. He put a hoop up for me, and he's the one that kind of put the ball in my hands. I just enjoyed playing in the backyard. And the first time I was ever able to try out for a team was 4th grade. I went to a Catholic elementary school, and I could try out for the JV team, and I was one of 4 4th graders to make the team, standing at about 4'6". I had to stand at the top of the key to shoot my free throws. That's how far forward I had to jump. But that team went 29-0. We won the New England CYO, and ever since then I was hooked. I was like, I have to be part of a team. I have to, have a ball in my hands and be part of something bigger than myself. So it was really cool.
Did you ever play any other sports besides basketball? Did your dad ever get you to play at least a little floor hockey or anything?
Yeah, so I did a little roller hockey in the basement. I used to check myself into the wall, and but no, I pretty much did anything you could think of besides football. I was actually a better baseball player than I was a basketball player, but just the love I had for the game at a young age, I was just drawn to basketball, and it's something I knew I wanted to do.
As you got a little bit older, starting to get into middle school, high school, how'd you get better as a player? What was your process for improving and trying to make your game better?
And all this, Mike, it might sound like revisionist history, right? Now that I can look back on my career as a player, but I spent a lot of time in the backyard, right? A lot of time in the driveway, just getting shots up. I have a younger sister, and she started playing basketball, so eventually she became just a rebounder for me. So I really appreciate all that time, but it was a lot of time in the driveway, and it's funny. One of my best friends growing up, still one of my best friends to this day. Even back then, he was always about a foot taller than me, and we would play 1-on-1 in the driveway, games up to 55 by 2s and 3s, just to pick a random arbitrary number, and it really taught me a lot about how to use my small stature versus a bigger player to my advantage. It taught me to be a little bit tougher, right? Having to box out someone that's a foot taller than you at a young age. So that was really cool. And that friend and I, we talked about, all right, you're going to go to Carolina, I'm going to go to Duke. And, growing up, I was like, okay, cool, right? Then I get to high school, I realized I couldn't jump over a piece of paper, and I was like, I gotta find a different way to be in this game, right? Because playing it might not be the thing that'll take me to the heights I want to achieve. But it was a lot of time in the driveway, and then again, just back in the day, you just needed a friend, a ball, and a basket, right? And you could get better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, different than it is today, for sure. You don't see the same methodology that you or I probably used to become good players today. Well, one, they don't have access to it, because if they want to go play a pickup game, it's almost impossible to find a pickup game if you're a young kid. So you got to get onto a team and be organized and all those things that go along with that. But it certainly is a different era, without question. As you moved into high school, what was your favorite memory of being a high school player?
There were a lot of them. I was really fortunate. I played at a great school, Marianapolis Prep in Thompson, Connecticut. I played for a legend in Dave Vitale. We went in my 4 years there. We went to 4 straight NEPSAC championships. We won the first year, so that was probably the most memorable. Unfortunately, we fell short the next 3 years, but it was pretty cool to play against guys in New England. Like, I remember my senior year, I had the opportunity to guard a sophomore, Michael Carter-Williams. It didn't go well for me then. It wouldn't go well for me now either. But it was pretty cool to be able to play for that program. Being able to go on those road trips with the guys all the way up to Maine, to play Bridgeton, things like that. But I would say probably winning that NEPSAC championship freshman year is the highlight.
Did you have dreams of playing college basketball right from the start? I mean, I know you talked about the Duke, North Carolina dream, but as reality set in there that maybe that wasn't in the cards, how did you shift your mentality in terms of still wanting to have that college basketball experience? And then what did that process look like for you?
It's actually pretty funny. I was really fortunate growing up. My mom is now she's now the vice president of Nichols College, which is a Division III school up in Dudley, Massachusetts. And I used to be able to go and use the gym, right? On days off of school, mom would have to take me to work. I would get to go in the gym, and I got to start, rubbing elbows with college coaches at a young age, right? And, doing all the skills camps, things like that. I knew I wanted to be around the game, right? I think that if it were up to my mom, I would have gone to Nichols, right? And I would have been a part of that team. But I knew, again, having a sense that I wanted to get into coaching, I knew that for me, I wanted to go to the highest level I could possibly go to, and be involved with the basketball program, whether that was having the opportunity to walk on or be a student manager, or whatever the case was. And it just so happened that my junior year of high school, I'm starting to look at colleges a little bit more. And because of my mom's employment at Nichols, there was tuition exchange involved. And there was a giant list of schools. And I'm looking at the AP top 25, and I'm like, all right, I want to get into broadcasting, so I'm going to apply to Syracuse, and Gonzaga seems like a cool place, right? Well, come to find out that I couldn't apply to those schools through tuition exchange because that list, the school wasn't sending enough people out. So that year, my mom, she got a new boss. His name's Bill Piezinski. He's now the president at Nichols. But he played at a small Division II school in North Carolina, Catawba College. And then he went on to work in their advancement office. He actually was on staff at Memphis when Tick Price was the head coach there. And he's the one that kind of introduced me to Catawba in general. And he set up a meeting with Jim Baker, who was the head coach there at the time. And we were on a family vacation to Williamsburg, Virginia. We drove 5 hours to see Catawba and then 5 hours back to Williamsburg. But I had the opportunity to sit down with Coach Baker, and he said, you can come in and we'll let you be a manager as a freshman, right? And then see what happens. And I end up going to Catawba, and I think the second day of school, the guys were getting ready to play pickup, and I was just shooting around with them, and I made 20 straight threes. And Coach Baker happened to be looking through the gym window, and he pulled me in the office and he said, I think we can find a jersey for you. It might not be easy, but we can find a jersey for you. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. The 17 minutes I played in my college career, I remember every single second of it. But with that, right, it helped me grow exponentially as a potential coach, right? That scouting report front and back, and your teammates are coming down the end of the bench saying, hey, Vesh, what's this guy doing, right? How do I have to close out to this guy? And it was really cool to experience that, and I'm thankful that everything worked out the way it did.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned a couple of times that you kind of knew that you wanted to become a coach. What was it about your experience in the game as a young player that made you realize that, hey, coaching is where I want to end up? Because obviously, again, we all love the game of basketball. Clearly, if you had been given the opportunity to continue playing, you certainly would have been focused on that. But it's always interesting to me because I feel like, Ben, there's two paths, right? There's the path that kind of you're describing where you knew from a young age that, hey, I want to get into coaching. I'm going to play maybe as long as I can, but eventually I want to become a coach. And then there's other people who they play. They're just focused on being a player. And then all of a sudden their career's over and they look around. They're like, all right, now what do I do with basketball? I want to stay involved in it. Maybe now I pivot to coaching. So what was it about coaching? Was there a singular moment? Was there a mentor? Was there somebody that you looked to? How did you realize early on that you knew that was the direction you wanted to go?
I think that it stemmed from just being part of something bigger than myself. Always being part of a team, whether it was basketball, baseball, soccer, even the golf team. You might be an individual, but you're part of a team. And through that, right, by playing that many sports as a kid, you are around so many different coaches, right? And I truly feel like I was incredibly lucky to have some of the coaches I had at an early age. They never necessarily were like, hey, Ben, you should get into coaching, because I was 12 years old. It was more like, the way that they instilled confidence in everybody, right? The amount of time that they put in that we could see, right? And that just paled in comparison to how much they were doing on their own time, right? Spending all those extra hours as a little league coach, and that's their hobby. They're not even getting paid for that. And I think that the more I realized that my 5'9" frame wasn't probably going to make it to the NBA. I started watching things a little differently, right? I actually watched the coaches on the sideline, and you get older, you start listening to more interviews, things like that. But you watch the way that they coach. You watch you watch the game a little bit differently. So I don't know if it was necessarily one specific moment that I was like, light bulb, this is what I want to do. But I think it was always in the back of my mind that I've played for some great coaches, and if I had that kind of opportunity, I would love to do it.
Can you point to one or two things that those youth coaches or the coaches that you had when you were young, something that you feel like is still a part of you as a coach today, like something you picked up from somebody that coached you, and maybe it was basketball, maybe it was a different sport, but just something that touched you at that time that you still feel like you carry with you today in your coaching?
It sounds really funny, but my dad, he had the opportunity to be an assistant my 8th grade year on the basketball team. He ended up being an assistant my 8th grade year playing Little League Baseball too. And, it wasn't necessarily anything that he did coaching wise that stuck with me, but it was that sense of accountability that he instilled in me at a young age. Right. Again, I laugh at some of the stuff now that I'm doing with my daughter, that my dad did with me, that I kind of rolled my eyes at as a kid.
Right.
Like everything being in its place, everything being in a certain order. But, looking back on it, it was just that sense of accountability. And I think that that's something that as the game has evolved, right, as basketball changes, holding players accountable is one thing that I don't think will ever change, right? I think that the methodology might change, but being able to hold, in my case, young men accountable on and off the court, that's something that stuck with me for a young age and something that will continue within my coaching career.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you think about what it takes to put together a cohesive team, right, that accountability is something that is never going to go away. To your point, the methodology may change, the way you get to that may change, but ultimately, as coaches, as a leader, you have to be able to hold your people accountable to whatever standard it is that you want them to live up to, or you really don't have anything. There's nothing left beyond that. So that makes a lot of sense to me. All right, let's jump back to Catawba. While you're there, what's the conversation like with Coach Baker, the coaching staff, in terms of, are you letting them know, like, hey, when I'm done with this, I'd really love to get into coaching. So as much as you can sort of bring me into the fold with the coaching staff, that would be much appreciated? Or was that something that you were just kind of doing on your own without necessarily letting them know? Just how did that relationship work out in terms of you sort of learning to become a coach?
Right. So it was actually a little column A, column B, right? Division II schools, still to this day, right? Like, there are coaches that are volunteers, right? There are staff members that have other full-time jobs. And when I was at Catawba, Coach Baker was the head coach full-time. And then we had an assistant named Bill Haggerty, who's since passed away, unfortunately. But Coach Haggerty was an assistant basketball coach, and he was also the head cross-country coach for boys and girls, or men's and women's cross-country. And I used to just go sit in Coach Hag's office, and I'd sit on the couch and we'd talk and talk and talk, and every once in a while he'd be like, hey, what do you think about this kid? And he'd show me a recruit. He'd walk me through some of his philosophy. He used to coach the women's basketball team at Catawba. He kind of just talked to me about coaching in general, and it wasn't ever like hey, Coach Hag, I think I want to get into coaching. It was just being in his office, having those conversations, right? Grabbing a bite to eat with him in the cafeteria. That was one way, right? And the other way, which I think brings my story full circle, at Catawba, my roommate, or I was his roommate. He was the big man on campus. I was just lucky to be in his presence. Lee Martin was my roommate. Lee is currently an assistant at Ohio University on the men's basketball side. But Lee went to Hargrave as a post-grad. We graduated college on a Saturday. He started working at Hargrave that next Monday as an assistant. But we would sit up in the room when we had free time, and we would just talk about, what we were doing as a team, right? What things we liked, what we didn't like, because I think that we both had a sense of wanting to stay in the game, right? Lee was a really talented player, and he could have had a future playing overseas, but he really wanted to get into coaching. And I think that the two of us pushed each other with that, right? Like we examined things a little differently. I remember our senior year, we were both captains, and we brought some ideas to Coach Baker and the rest of the coaching staff about how to improve the culture. We were coming off of a bad year, and we wanted to do some things to kind of change things, use player leadership, and because of those relationships with Coach Haggerty, with Coach Baker, and then with Lee, it just kind of cemented my thought about wanting to really be in coaching.
Were you focused on becoming a coach at the college level? Obviously, you have now being at Hargrave, you're sort of in a, I don't know if it's sort of an in-between, right? With the high school versus college. Were you thinking about being a teacher and a high school coach? Where was your mindset in terms of when you graduated, what direction you were thinking? Obviously, we have coaches on all the time that they think they're going to go one path and then an opportunity opens up somewhere else and all of a sudden they're going down a different direction than maybe they originally planned. So where were you at when you graduated?
Right. And again, it's funny because freshman year of college, right? We had a freshman seminar course, and one of the assignments was to write your own obituary, and just, again, what your vision for your life is. And I wrote in that I was the all-time winningest coach at Marianapolis Prep, that I wanted to go back home and be a high school coach and coach there for 40 years. And, it's funny that's how it started out. And then, you keep thinking about it more and more. And I think that the draw to get to college was always front of mind for me. Again, that's why having those relationships with the coaching staff was really important. Coach Baker, he played at Catawba, but before he played at Catawba, he was at UNC Charlotte. He'd been on staff at VMI and Virginia Tech before getting the head job at Catawba. So he still had some connections there. And I think that when graduation rolled around, still really didn't know what I could do, right? I had applied to a couple grad schools, Florida State, got in there, and then Nichols College. I had an inside track there, but no, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and it was March of senior year. Our season was done, and I reached out to the head coach at Nichols at the time, and I said, "Hey, I just got accepted into the grad school. Thinking about going to grad school there. Is there any way that I could hop on your staff as a volunteer? I don't need anything. I want a chance to learn." And he said yes, right? Offered me the job, and got home in May and met with him a few days later. I was all on board to be an assistant at Nichols. I was going to do grad school, volunteer. And then about 3 days later, I got a call from Andrew Vitale, who was Dave Vitale's son, who was an assistant coach when I was in high school. And he said, "Hey, I've got an assistant opening on staff. You want it? I can pay you $8,000. And I said, "Oh, sure. I'm all in." And what he didn't tell me is that the $8,000 was also dorm duty, subbing, driving the bus, and you have to ref some soccer matches to make those ends meet. But I said it was really something that I couldn't pass up. Right, I was living at home. I got to go back to my alma mater, and then I take that assistant job, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this high school thing for a while, and then I end up being the assistant varsity girls coach while I'm there too. I just became a practice player for them, but that was a really cool experience, right? To coach females for the first time, because I never thought that I would be in the women's game. I thought I would just stay in the men's game. And then, as luck would have it, the season ends that year, and I was the guy that senior year I started dating a freshman in the second semester, and she's now my wife. But I ended up moving back down to North Carolina without a job, just to try to figure it out. applied for a couple jobs at like Greensboro Day and other prestigious programs in the area. Didn't really know if coaching was going to happen, right? I was still doing the grad school thing. I was thinking, okay, I'll just get my master's and then we'll figure something out. Because again, the goal was always to get to college. So I was told, you need a master's degree. So I was getting the master's degree, but didn't have a job. And, Coach Baker had been let go that spring after 3 consecutive losing seasons. It was tough to see him go just because of the opportunity that he gave me and that he gave so many other young men over the years. But fortunately, the guy who got hired, Rob Perrin, who's still the head coach there now at Catawba, he was looking to add someone to the staff, and I'll never forget how stressed I was that June trying to put together a brochure for Rowan County Basketball Summer League. And I was doing it on like Microsoft Paint. And because that was part of my interview to be on his staff. And I handed it in to him, and I don't even think he ever looked at it. Right. He told me after I left, he's like, yeah, I was going to hire you anyways. I just wanted to see if you would work. But I was there, right? I had made it to the college ranks. I was an assistant. I was a true volunteer, right? I was training kids to make enough money just to put gas in the car to make the commute back and forth to work. But I had made it, right? And I loved showing up to work every single day, and it was a perfect storm.
What was it like in both of those situations? You're coaching at your alma mater. So what's it like to step back into the gym, into the locker room, into the coach's office of a place where you were a player and now suddenly you're on the other side of the wall, the other side of the door? What was that like in each one of those places? And I always feel like coaches who get an opportunity to coach at your alma mater, there's just as much as you put into every job that you have, I got to feel like there's like, even if it's just 0.0001%, whatever it is, of pride in coming back to your alma mater. So just maybe describe what that was like at both of those places.
You're right. There's an immense level of pride. You find yourself looking up at the wall every once in a while, right? And you remember your teammates, and you think about the championships you won, the success you had, the great memories, and you do work a little bit harder, right? It might be just a small percentage point harder, but you have an extra sense of pride because you don't want to let your alma mater down, right? And one of the things I learned very quickly, however, being at your alma mater, the kids don't necessarily care what you did back then, right? Like they don't want to hear about the time you took a charge to win the game. They don't care about any of that stuff, right? But once I realized that, right, once I realized that my story is my story, and I need to coach these kids every single day because it's their first time being there. It really helped. Just again, where everything is, right? The administration, which teachers, that you had a great relationship with when you were there, right? That, you can go and talk to them and the familiarity was great, right? But then again, your wardrobe doesn't have to change much. You just put on your old clothes and that works. But no, it was incredibly special to be able to do that. And to stay connected to those two places, even though, I'd gone away from Marianapolis for 4 years, and then I was only gone from Catawba for a year, but it was a new head coach, right? Luckily the administration stayed the same around, and there was a lot of familiarity, but like you said, sitting there thinking about it, right? All the feelings of pride come rushing back to you. I got the Catawba jersey hanging on my office wall behind us, and every single day I walk in, that's one of the first things I see. And it reminds me of the opportunity that I had to be able to wear that jersey for 4 years.
So during those first two experiences, what aspect of coaching, because obviously prior to getting those two jobs, you're imagining yourself as a coach. You're thinking of yourself as a coach, despite the fact that you're still in the midst of your playing career. What part of coaching did you really love right from the very beginning? Was there one aspect that you're like, man, this is it? I know a lot of people say, I just like player development, or maybe you liked the X's and O piece of it, but just for you, what was it that right away, initially out of the gate, that you're like, yeah, I'm in the right place?
Right. It's funny. It was probably the X's and O's initially, right? Like I'm an X and O junkie. My one of my assistants now, I think he has me blocked on X or Twitter or whatever it is, because I'll be scrolling at midnight and I'll just DM him set plays that I like, just so I can store them for later. We may never do anything with them, but I'm like, oh man, this is a great play. I got to save this just in case. But that was what drew me to it. Especially the experience at Marianapolis, right? We had, on the boys' side, we had a team that had to play a certain way because we couldn't really shoot the way we wanted to, right? We had two really good bigs, both Division I level bigs. But our guard play was young, right? We had young guards, so we had to tweak how we wanted to play. But then on the girls' side, right, they had 6 Division I players. And like, I was just a practice player for them, and being my size, I had to be a post. And I told those girls, I said, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you can run rim to rim. You might not touch the ball. You have to get every rebound. You got to set great screens. I want to go back to being a guard so I can run three-point line. But that was really the X's and O's was a first, right? Being able to have that clipboard for the first time. Right, and Coach Vitale handed me that clipboard during practice. He said, "Okay, draw something up," and I'm like, "Man, I've diagrammed things before, but I don't know what you want me to do here." I thought that I diagrammed this great play. Right, there was a cross screen, there was a down screen, and I felt great about it. And then Coach Vitale said, "That's the flex, right?" I said, I'd run it before, but I never really drew it up. But no, that was really cool. And on the flip side, right, the biggest challenge that you experience right away is recruiting. At the prep school level, you're able to recruit, and again, it's different being on that side of things. You really. For most guys that get into coaching that have played first and gone on, like, they had some level of a recruiting process, right? Mine was a meeting in the Catawba parking lot with Coach Baker. Hey, you want to do this? Yes. Okay. There wasn't the whole big process that you see with guys today. So luckily I had enough know-how of Marianapolis and then Catawba to be able to speak confidently about it, but public speaking wasn't always one of my strong suits. So, I was able to recruit some, but I knew I needed to back it up with my knowledge, with how hard I worked in practice every single day. But I think that those were some of the early years, right? Those experiences of holding a clipboard for the first time was great, and then losing a recruit for the first time was not great.
Easier to talk to the parents or easier to talk to the players when you were recruiting?
The players, for sure. And it's still that way today. Again, it kind of bleeds into what we do here. But being at a prestigious boarding school like Hargrave, our guys are all away from home for the first time, for the most part, right? And I tell parents in the recruiting process, we're going to be in communication, right? Because you're trusting us with your baby, but I'm going to coach your young man, right? I'm going to pour into him every single day, and you're going to hear from me, good, bad, ugly, right? The only time that you won't hear from me only when bad things are happening, right? But I've just learned that it's been a lot easier to talk to the players throughout the recruiting process.
All right, tell me how your one season at Catawba leads you to Hargrave. How does that opportunity come to you, and what do you remember about the process of getting there?
So it's just crazy how this thing has evolved. Like I mentioned before, Lee Martin had gone on to work at Hargrave. He worked for A.W. Hamilton, who's now the head coach at Eastern Kentucky University. And I had been wrapping up the season at Catawba. Again, I was willing to come back and volunteer for another year. There was conversation about adding a developmental team at Catawba that I would ended up being the head coach, and that could have gotten me a full-time salary. But it was taking a little bit too long for that to come to fruition. And Lee reached out to me that March and said, "Hey, our varsity head coaching job is going to come open. Would you have any interest in it?" And I was like, I never really thought about being a head coach. I did, when I was 18, but then when I'm 25, I wasn't really thinking about it. I was settled into being an assistant. I enjoyed being an assistant. And he's like, "Well, it'll pay you $10,000, and you can live on the dorms, right? You can eat your meals in the cafeteria." And I was like, "Well, I'll be up there tomorrow to interview." And I was able to interview with Coach Hamilton, and the rest was history, right? I ended up taking the job, and that $10,000, I felt like I was a king. I had a place to live, didn't have any real expenses, right? And I just had, I had an opportunity to coach at a place like Hargrave that, I'd heard about for years from Lee and his experience as a player, right? They lost in the national prep championship to Tilton, who beat us in the New England championship my senior year. It's just, it was always something that I wanted to get up here and see what it was like. We recruited a couple guys at Catawba from here at Hargrave. So I'd been to the gym before. I'd met Coach Hamilton, but it was never anything more than pleasantries. So the fact that I was kind of sought out to be hired here was really humbling, to say the least.
So obviously, again, this is a unique situation, right? It's a boarding school. It's all male. You have, as you said, guys who are away from home for the very first time. Some of them pretty young to be away from home, and you're sort of having to manage all that piece of it on top of coaching a basketball team. So what was the biggest adjustment for you in terms of, let's focus on sort of the relationship piece and how you tried to build a connection with players who are coming from all different areas, bringing all different kinds of backgrounds, and then you have to bring them together and mold them into a team. What did that look like? What was your perspective on how to go about doing that when you talked to maybe people who had tried to do it before, but just what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. And the one thing that's even more unique about our experience here at Hargrave, right, is that we have the military component to it. And, I think that is the biggest challenge, and it will forever be the biggest challenge of getting people to understand that the perception around military school is not that of the reform schools, 40, 50 years ago, right? It's truly, we're a college prep school, and we use the military structure to execute our mission. So once you can put young men and their parents at ease about that, right, and helping them understand that what we do here, right, it's to give guys reps with 3 basic life skills: be on time, be respectful, and look sharp. And those 3 life skills, whether you make it to the NBA or whatever you want to do in life, right, wherever life takes you, if you can do those 3 things, and you have a little bit of skill, you're going to be just fine. So that's part of it, right, is getting them to understand that what we do here, it's very much a prep school. Our guys just wear military uniforms instead of a shirt and tie like you would find at a traditional prep school. So I give my assistants a lot of credit. While I've been the head coach here now for 2 years on the post-grad side, my staff does a great job at those initial conversations, right? They're so sharp with what they do recruiting wise that, we'll hop on a Google Meet or a Zoom call with a kid, and they'll hand me a little note card that, this is the kid's likes, dislikes, this is what he's really looking for at Hargrave. And because I have the institutional knowledge now, I'm able to help with that in the recruiting process. I'm very much a closer at this point of my career at Hargrave. But it wasn't always that way, right? I remember I was really fortunate. I came in to Hargrave in May of 2016. We had just won a national prep championship a few months earlier, right? Coach Hamilton got him to the top of the mountain. So I was coming into Hargrave at a great time, right? But I also remember that entire summer, my head was spinning because I would go on every single tour so I could learn what the campus looked like, right? I had to understand some military terminology, right? I had to, again, get my feet wet with things like that, while also, still continuing to improve recruiting wise, right? And I was really fortunate my first year coming in as the high school coach. The previous high school coach left me a few good players, right? And help bring in a couple other really good ones, right? And we had an opportunity we ended up winning 26 games that year, which is still the modern record for most wins in a season on the high school side of things. And after that, right, I was able to piggyback on that success, along with the success of the post-grad program to really break down most of those apprehensions on the military side. And then once you kind of establish that connection, for me, it's about just continual reps, right? Every single day or two, you reach out to them, you reach out to the family, whoever is helping them make that decision, so that, when they do decide to come to Hargrave, right, and they're here, it feels like we've known each other for years, even though it might only be the second or third time we're actually seeing each other face to face.
Makes a lot of sense. What is the similarities and differences in recruiting for the high school program and the post-grad program? And then typically, where are you guys looking for players? Who's the avatar for a player that makes sense for Hargrave when you go out and you're looking to bring guys into the program?
Right. So I'll start with the high school side first, right? On the varsity side, we're looking for guys that want to be here for 2-3 years, right? Guys that can really grow within the program, and we found some success with that in my 4 years as the varsity head coach of being able to have those multi-year guys, and you could really establish a culture that way. Again, it's finding the right fits for the school first, right? It's not necessarily how many points you can score a game, how many wins you can help contribute to, if you're not willing to buy into what Hargrave's all about in terms of developing the whole person. It's a little more challenging on the high school side of things because the kids are younger, so it's tough for them to really fully grasp what we're doing here. But on the post-grad side, right, and it's funny the way the game is now. It's really shifting to more of a prep model, right, to where we're gonna not just bring in 13th graders, but some true seniors, some true juniors, and the challenge in that is that team, even this year, right, we have a 13-man roster right now, and 11 of them are gone at the end of the year, right? Normally it's every single person, but we've been fortunate to have a couple 2026 guys on our roster this year. So the challenge there is that you have to find 15 individuals every single year, and you have no idea who they really are until they get here, right? You have no idea how they're really going to fit together, not just from a playing standpoint, but from, our guys wake up at 6:15 and they go to bed at 10 o'clock, and everywhere in between, they do everything together, right? We work out twice a day. They go to classes. They're in lunch together. They're doing activities together. So you really need to make sure that you have the right mix of guys, and you do your best in the recruiting process to find the right fits, and what that ends up becoming is it's guys that you really want to be around, right? Because it's guys that we spend more time as a staff with our guys than we do with our own families. So we want to make sure that we have kids that are about the right things, that are willing to roll their sleeves up and go to work, be everyday guys. And it also helps when they have some talent too. But no, I mean, the guys that we have, the guys that we look for, they just show up every day, right? And they choose Hargrave every single day.
Coaches, Game Changer is making your game film more valuable than ever. New this season to Game Changer, Film Room allows team staff to analyze full game videos, add comments to specific moments, and quickly share feedback with other coaches, team members, or families. The #1 youth sports app automatically skips downtime in the game film, condensing event video into active play so you can focus on the moments that matter. The best part? It's completely free for coaches. Download Game Changer now on iOS or Android and take your coaching to the next level with Film Room on Game Changer. Game Changer. Stream, score, connect. How do you balance as a coach? I'm assuming that every player there has aspirations of playing beyond Hargrave, which means that I'm sure in their mind that they want to be able to showcase what they're able to do as an individual to advance their career. And yet at the same time, you're trying to put together a cohesive team that plays together, that shares the ball, that's unselfish. And so how do you put those two things together out on the floor? And then obviously if you have a 13-player roster, all those players want to play. They've all made the commitment to come to Hargrave. How do you make all that work and balance it so that you're able to meet the needs of each one of the players and yet still put a cohesive team out on the floor?
It's the joy of the job every single day, to be honest with you, right? Putting together a cohesive unit, so that we have an opportunity to be successful on the court, because I think that at the end of the day, college coaches that are looking to recruit high school kids, right? They want to find winners. They don't want empty stat guys on losing programs. So we do have an emphasis on winning, right? And one of the things that I think that we do really well here is that we're going to take, anywhere from 13 to 15 individuals on a given year. We start working out the first night they get here, right? And, we spend time in the off season really working on individual development. We have within our schedule, our guys go to 6 classes every single day. 2 of those classes are basketball conditioning, right? And during that time, we're going to do our individual skill work, our weightlifting, any kind of film stuff we do individually. But we tell everyone in the recruiting process, that is your only time you can be selfish, right? Within our program. I want you to be selfish with your reps on the court, your reps in the weight room. If we do a pool workout, I want you to be selfish with your time in there. Because at the end of the day, these guys are only going to play for us for 1, maybe 2 years. So we want to make sure that when they do have the opportunity to get to that college stage, they are the best version of themselves at that point. So we do put a big emphasis on player development, preseason, off season, and also in season, right? Very rarely will we take that class time away from them to do team specific stuff, right? We might do some team specific skill work, right? Things that in our system that we think that we can improve on, but that's also going to help them improve as individuals. So the thought process is, right, that through osmosis, if all 15 players get better individually, if we're doing our job as a coaching staff, our team should be better as the season goes on. But it is a fun dichotomy, right? To build up individuals without sacrificing the team, but also not sacrificing the individuals to build up the team here. So it's a fun challenge every single day.
How does that work in terms of playing time again with a roster of 13. So if guy 13 on the roster maybe isn't playing as much as he would like, because obviously every basketball player who's ever lived wants to play more, unless they're playing every single minute of the game, and then they're probably not getting enough shots as it is. So how do you balance that? How do you have conversations with your guys about playing time and how those minutes are doled out?
We do a couple things here, right? The first thing is that we're scheduled right now. We're 24-5 as we head into February. We have at least 12 more games, not including postseason play, and then postseason play after that. So, we're playing over 40 games in exhibitions. Anywhere up to 50, depending on how we do postseason wise. So that's a lot of games, right? That's a lot of opportunities for guys to break in. We play a lot of back-to-backs and a lot of back-to-back-to-backs. And at our level, at the prep school side, we're able to play with all college rules. So we're playing 20-minute halves, just like the big boys do. And that's a lot of minutes out there to be had, especially for guys transitioning from the high school side of things. So, by nature of our schedule, most everybody is going to play in at least half of those games, right? How many minutes you get in those games, they're all earned, right? Everything is earned here. We don't have any preconceived starting lineup. We don't have any preconceived rotation. And, you look at our box score for the season right now, our lowest minute guy, right? And he's had some off and on injuries, right? So he's played in 14 games so far. He's playing 8 minutes a game, right? Nobody else is under 10 minutes a game. And they're all playing, at least 75% of the games we've played so far. So I don't know how many places in the country that don't strategically go 5 in, 5 out are playing that many guys, that many minutes, right? We're playing 12 guys, double-digit minutes, including, a few guys over 20. But it's also part of the way we recruit too, right? We know that we're going to have a team full of guys that are hungry to get on the court, right? That are going to earn those minutes every single day. So, some nights it might not be your night. You might just come in and you earn that first half rotation, but you might not produce that game. You might just not have it, whatever it is. And the beauty is that we have somebody that's worked just as hard as you sitting right there, and they have an opportunity to take advantage of that. So those things, right? The way we schedule, the way we recruit, and then also the way we play, right? We do play a fast-paced style. We don't press as much as we used to, right? But it's something that we really adopted here at Hargrave under Coach Kevin Keats, who's now the head coach at NC State. He knew that having a team full of that many Division I caliber players, he had to get them seen by coaches. So we press, we play fast pace on offense, right? And what that does is guys naturally get tired after 4 or 5 minute stints. So we've got 5 guys ready to come in, and we're able to rotate through guys that way. And if we do what we're supposed to do, there's a lot of second halves where we find ourselves, up 20 with 10 minutes to go. And that gives us an opportunity to play most everybody on the roster every game when we can.
Well, talk about the development of that philosophy of how your team wants to play. So is that a vision that, as you evolved as a coach and thought about, hey, this is what I want to try to do offensively, defensively, how much of that is based on the theoretical inside Ben's mind of this is what I'd like my team to look like, versus how much of it is the personnel, the type of players that you have at Hargrave, and just how has that evolution for you been in terms of trying to determine how you want your teams to play, what you want them to look like out on the floor?
Right. It's funny, right? Being an X and O junkie, I want our guys to run beautiful set plays and make the right read and execute properly every time. And then you sit back and you remember that, number one, you're coaching, even though they're high level, they're still high school athletes, right? They still need to grow as basketball players. And they're also only going to be here for 1, maybe 2 years. So me sitting there as the head coach and teaching them the Ben Veshi playbook isn't necessarily benefiting them for their goals to go to the college level, right? So what we've done over the years here, and this is not anything that's just specific to me, right? Every coach in my chair has done this. You teach the guys how to play, not necessarily to run plays. My team probably thinks we have a lot of plays. We have, maybe 20 quick hitters when it's all said and done. But it's about, knowing how to set great screens, knowing how to read those screens, when to cut, how hard to cut, how to finish your cuts. Guys that came from high schools where they were put in a box because of their size, right? Teaching them to be able to play a more modern style of basketball that is at the college level. And if they have the opportunity beyond, because I tell people, right, whether you go to the fastest paced team in the country or the slowest paced team in the country, all the skills that we teach you, right, you're going to have to know anyways. We just like to do it at a bit of a faster pace. Once you really understand that that's what the goal is, right? Our goal, we have a recruiting video that we show guys, and the last little segment is labeled the tradition of winning. We've won some national prep championships, we've won some conference championships, but the first images you see in that section are guys signing scholarships, right? Because that's why my staff and I, we wake up every morning and we want to do what's best for our guys as individuals, right? As part of our program, part of that Hargrave family. So we want to make sure that guys aren't just put into a box, right? That, they're you have to do this because you are a 5, right? Or you are a 1, so you shouldn't do this, right? It's more so, basketball has become arguably as beautiful as it's ever been, right? I know that some people like to just say, oh, people, you just shoot threes and layups because that's what the analytics says. But, to see 5 guys moving all in sync and whether that's passing game, whether that's the flex, whether that's the Warriors running 5-out stuff, if you do it and you do it exceptionally well, right, it's beautiful. And that's why, again, we want to make sure that we teach these guys how to play. It's ugly at first, right? Because it's guys that are coming from high school. Some of them never played with a shot clock before outside of AAU. Most everybody was the best player or one of the best players wherever they're coming from, very similar to a college, and they've never played together before. So you don't really have that kind of connection with a guy to know when they're going to cut back door, when they want to come for a handoff versus, they want to stick in the corner, whatever it is. So we get a lot of reps with that. And you just, now it's January 30th and we're just starting to figure it out offensively, right? With a month and a half to go in the season. So knowing that, the way that we play, we put a premium on defense, right? We really want to teach these guys how to guard at a college level because, again, most high school kids are not doing that, right? They don't really want to defend, but if you don't defend, you're not going to be on the court here, right? So we dive into things half court defensively. Like I said, we pressed a lot more back in the day. I think that we're hopefully going to be back there, but right now it's just a curveball for us. But playing that wide open style, it really allows us to help the guys learn how to play because not everything's scripted.
How does that translate into your practice design and the way you put together, whether you want to call it drills, whether you want to call it small-sided games, however you want to talk about it in terms of your practice design to teach the guys, as you said, how to play? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis in practice as you're trying to get guys to see some of those concepts that you just talked about? Okay, when am I going to cut? When do I come off that DHO? When am I going to cut back door? What am I doing defensively on help side? How do you get all those things incorporated into practice, and what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think that practice, is kind of a bit of a moving target. Like I mentioned with the basketball class, where we put that emphasis on player development. And within our structured daily schedule, we have a 2-hour block for practice. But I want to make sure that I give our guys, maybe an extra 15, 20 minutes to get on the gun or to work with an assistant, so that they have more time for that individual development. With that, our practices have to be incredibly efficient, right? And one way that we're able to do that is we compete in virtually everything that we do, right? So, for example, we'll come in and I don't know if it's just this generation of kids, but we spend more time warming up than any team I've ever been a part of, and it's important, right? We get the guys, they come in, they have their individual warm up, right? They get their body moving, whatever they need to do, and then we'll do some kind of a either teaching or active warm up, right? Like we do a dummy box out shell. That one of my buddies told me that they do at the college level, and it's something that has really helped our guys because it's not necessarily a physical sweat, but mentally they have to know how we're rotating, they have to know how we're guarding things in the half court, right? I get to do it, so I get to throw up shots every once in a while, but that kind of gets us really locked in for practice. Then we'll do our dynamic stretching, and up until this past week, we would do a competitive full court drill, right? Whether that's just put 8 minutes on the clock and we're going to play it out like a scrimmage, right? And that's how we're going to get practice started. I've sseen a drill before that we've done a few times, the race car drill, where you've got 6 seconds to have the paint touch, and then you'll get your full 20 seconds. We'll do like a Buckeye transition. Guy shoots a free throw to a 2-on-1, back to a 3-on-2. I say we did it up until last week because on Sunday we actually had a guy shatter a backboard during halftime trying to dunk it. So that was he made the dunk, which is pretty cool for him, right? But we've had to be in the half court all week in practice. So it took out the full court element of practice. But what we do is we have a series of drills that will correspond with our principles. That we go through, pick one of two every day, and we get continual reps at that kind of stuff, right? Like we do a 4-on-4 slide shell, right? So we can teach the guys a slide dribble handoff, switch guard to guard screens. And earlier in the year, we would do it for, let's say we put 10 minutes on the clock, and the black team would go 5 minutes, and then they'd flip it 5, and the white team would go, and you tally up the number of stops they get, right? And as you get accustomed to that drill, it becomes just a drill, right? It becomes you checking the box. So now we do it to one perfect rep. So if you can do it perfectly that first time, that first 30-second rep, we can move on to the next thing, right? But if you don't, you got to stay in the drill, right? And it's just like golf. You want to have the lowest score, and then you don't have to run at the end of that drill. Then we'll do, a lot of what we do in the half court is out of shell-based type stuff. We do a pass and cut shell to ice, right? Which works our offense a little bit, right? So the guys on the perimeter know we're going to pass perimeter, we're going to rim cut, we're going to fill opposite. And then at a certain point on the shot clock, our 5 will come up and set a ball screen. And because we ice ball screens, we want to get reps of that every single day, right? And now we're at the point of the season where it's like you get a stop, you stay on defense. It's a defensive drill. You want to win, you got to get stops, right? And you get into a game, you got to get stops if you want to win. And then one of the things we adopted recently, right, in the second semester is we call it 50 game, right? Our 5 out is called 50. And we'll have the offense start just behind half court, defense starts at the coach's box, and we'll sprint into it. And there's no rules, right? There's no script to it. We're just playing half court offense. And because the way that our motion is set up, with 5 guys on the perimeter, it's how to really, again, teach them how to play, right? We guard things a specific way, so they might get really good at knowing how to curl that down screen because we like to trail, but being able to pass, move, right? You learn how to play with those guys more, and what that does is it helps the units that play together the most, right? They gain that confidence together. So that when you do get into a game, right, it's just brief eye contact. And it's like you've been playing with someone for 3 years, 4 years now, but really you've only been playing together for 6 months. So we just continually rep things out. And then every day as part of that competition model, we like to end with pressure free throws. Admittedly, we could improve from the line as a team. But one of the things that we do now, that those pressure free throws, let's say that you shoot for your team, Mike, and you make your first free throw. Your team gets 1 point. You miss your second free throw, my team gets 3, right? So you put that extra little pressure so that when you do get into a late second half, we got to make both free throws. We've been there before, right? We see kind of what happens, the alternative of not making it, right? The other team could go on a run. It could be the difference in winning and losing. But we do all that in about an hour and a half, hour and 40-minute practice, including that warm-up time. So we're really efficient. We're really competitive. And I think that for as long as I've been here, right, this is year 9 for me in total. That daily competition is truly the biggest separator, right? I mentioned it to a young man the other day who was visiting campus looking at Hargrave for next year. And I said, you know what? It's really true, but without friction, there's no movement, right? So, you need that iron to sharpen iron. You need that daily competitiveness because with a 15-man roster, right, it's not easy for us to make decisions on who can play. So we kind of put the onus on the players. Hey, you're going to compete every single day. You beat out the dude that's in front of you 3 straight days, you're going to get some minutes, right? And like, hey, I might beat you today, but that means you're going to work even harder tomorrow, which means I have to work just as hard, if not harder, to maintain the status quo. So that daily competition is really help benefit our guys on and off the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. When you can get guys going at each other and really trying to push, right? And that's what makes everybody better. And so I'm sure you're having those conversations of like, look, by you working hard, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping the guy across from you. And then conversely, you're also helping the entire team to improve and get better. And so if you can stoke that competitive fire by building that into the practice design, I mean, obviously that's a no-brainer to be able to try to get your guys to play to the level that you want them to play. Question just in terms of, again, going back to the teaching guys how to play, because I think one thing that especially young coaches sometimes struggle with is, how do I know when to stop play and correct something versus interrupting the flow of practice with a constant whistle of like, hey, I'm seeing this, that, and I've got to make all these different coaching points. How do you balance that in terms of, all right, we're scrimmaging, we're doing the 5-on-5 drill that you talked about, and there's a read that you see from the sideline that you're like, oh, that's a read that I'd like the guy to go the other way, or I'd like him to make a different decision. How do you balance out when to stop it, when to let it go? Are you talking to guys on the sideline when they come out of the drill? What's that process look like for you in terms of the coaching on the floor and how you go about getting the guys the information that they need or that you want to share with them?
Right. It's a mix of everything, right? Pretty much anything you mentioned. One of the things we do we film our practices every day. So, I'm unless something is really egregious, right? Like, you went left when it's clear you should have gone right. I'm not necessarily going to make those spot corrections until I just look again and see if there are any patterns or trends or anything like that. With the design of our practices, what really helps is that outside of that full court segment, that's really about 8 minutes, everything is based on a shot clock, right? It's based on a 30-second shot clock. So, we try to like that slide shell, right? We'll let the guys rep everything out, but if you made a mistake, you double slid when you're only supposed to slide one, right? We're going to correct that after the rep. Right, so that we can get the guys in the mindset of playing 30 seconds of defense, without waiting. You hear the whistle, then you stop. But we do a pretty good job as a staff of making sure that we're not interrupting live play as often as possible. Because again, in a game, you can't just stop, right? You might be able to call a timeout, but at our level, you only get 6 of those a game. So you have to kind of again, have a little spot in your brain, right? That you have that memory bank that, you might be able to hold a memory for, 3 or 4 plays and be like, hey, Mike, you remember, a few plays ago, right? Guy drove baseline, help went, you have to drop, right? And it's something that they've already done before, right? So it's one thing that I've really tried to improve on as a coach, since I got to Hargrave is coaching in sound bites, right? 10, 15 seconds, boom, we're going to the next thing. And it's kind of hard for me because I do like to talk. But when you have the opportunity to do those kind of things, right, that it's like, hey, good, boom, next rep. Hey, we got to do better on this, right? If it's a continual mistake, right, then we'll really just put a full stop. And, my assistants and I will get out there and we'll really walk through like what is happening, what we're seeing. But for the most part, it's really just quick sound bites. Try not to take too much of that practice time because, again, we do have the constraints of our own daily schedule. So, being able to again, let maybe small things go, right? Not necessarily being too nitpicky about the angle of the screen, right? More so like, hey, did we get the stop? Yes. Okay. We got the stop, but this is what we're striving for. So, as long as you have that reminder in the back of their heads, after each rep, that we're able to just continue on with practice as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. Those sound bites I think are key. I think especially for young coaches, I know I was guilty of this and probably still am at times, right? Of you have something that you want to say and you get out there and you're talking. And after that 10 or 15 seconds when you should have been done, the player's attention span is gone and you're probably not getting across any of the points that you want to get across to them anyway. So being able to develop that skill of coaching and using concise language and being direct, I think is something that any coach, when you start looking at evaluating yourself, I think that's an area that, not that it's easy to be able to do that, but I think that's an easy one to identify when, hey, I'm over talking during practice and kind of interrupting the flow of what's happening. So tell me a little bit about the administrative role as sort of the director of basketball operations there. What are some of your responsibilities in that particular area of your job?
Yeah, it's a lot of scheduling, right? I think that's the biggest thing. We've got our national prep team, and then we have a varsity team, a JV team, and a middle school team, right? So I work in conjunction with our school's athletic director on things like that, especially with transportation and facilities. I was the athletic director before I became the head prep coach, and the ADs in our conference were always like, no, the coaches can't schedule games, we have to do it AD to AD, right? So I let our AD handle all the conference scheduling for those 3 teams, and then anything non-conference I do scheduling wise. A lot of game day operations, right? If we're not playing, I'm working the scoreboard or the clock, or I'm taking gate or whatever is needed of me in that moment. That kind of falls on me. And whenever I'm able to, I like to get to the middle school or JV or varsity practices and just kind of see what the coaches are doing. If they ask for anything advice wise, I again, it's kind of like with our team, right? Unless I see something egregious that I think that, my voice needs to be heard with that coach, I'm more than happy to offer advice, but I don't want them to feel like I'm looking over their shoulder at all times. And what that's done is it's got us a really cohesive basketball program, right? We all played last night. Again, not having our own gym, we were able to find a local college to play our middle school game, and then we played right after them. And our JV and varsity were on the road, and it was really cool. All 4 teams won last night, so I was something really nice around to have around coffee this morning. To talk about how the games went. To again, we look at film. We'll talk through things. And I'm just there as a support system for the lower levels. So any kind of we run a couple basketball events here, for the varsity team and then for our team. So all that kind of falls under my purview. And then again, working in conjunction with the AD for hiring of coaches, figuring out equipment needs, fundraising, things like that. So it's a unique position to be in. But it's one that's really rewarding because you get to sit back and watch those middle school games, and you see the coaches grow as the seasons go on, and you see the kids grow and you see them enjoying it. It reminds you how much you enjoyed playing when you were that age. So it's really cool to be able to stay connected to those programs as the director of basketball operations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure to be able to see the joy in those kids' faces, and as you said, to put yourself back in that position, I'm sure is very special. We talked about the recruiting on your end of it, where you're trying to recruit players to come into Hargrave, but obviously a big part of your job is helping your players to be able to move on to the next level and play college basketball. So let's talk a little bit about that side of it and how you go about building relationships with college coaches and kind of what your role is in the recruitment of your players from Hargrave to the college level.
Absolutely. I think that, the first piece I want to hit on that you mentioned is building those relationships with college coaches, right? And again, sitting in this chair, incredibly fortunate that, Kevin Keats, former PG head coach here, A.W. Hamilton, former PG head coach here, Takeo Siddle, who's the head coach at UNC Wilmington, was an assistant here. Mark Byington, who's the head coach at Vanderbilt, was an assistant here. So, you have people that have come through the program that are now head coaches at the Division I level. We've got 28 other guys that have either played and or coached here that are currently in the Division I ranks. So, we kind of have some natural relationships already there, right? But we also just can't send our kids to those, 10 schools, right? 15 schools. Right. We have to expand that relationship with everyone, not just in Division I, but Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior college, right? So one of the things we do every summer is we update our email database of every coach in the country at every level. And we send out weekly communication with those schools on our guys, right? So it's a lot of work on the back end for us, a lot of unseen hours for our staff, but it allows us to make sure that our guys stay relevant in the eyes of college coaches, right? The way that the landscape is changing with the transfer portal, everyone wanting to get older, you bring NIL into this, and there's so much uncertainty with everything, right? But, if you recruit the right kind of kids at Hargrave every year like we do, right, and you have the reputation that we have, right? We've had 29 NBA players since 1998. 75% of our alums have gone on to Division I schools. So we have a track record of success, and it's about putting the current guys in the in the front of mind of these college coaches. So it's continual communication, right? It's scheduling games and events that college coaches can attend. And then it's just following up with them, right? It's clipping up film, getting highlights ready, being able to have things at our disposal to just reach out. This past weekend we had an event in here and we had 8 different schools come throughout the weekend, and being able to, on Monday morning, once I figured out the backboard situation, handwriting those guys a note and then sending one out to them. I know that might seem a little old school, but people still like to get that kind of mail, and just thanking them for their time, because Chatham, Virginia is not the easiest place to get to. The closest airport is still over an hour away. So it's really important to us that we have that continual communication, that college coaches at every level understand, what Hargrave has to offer this year from a recruiting standpoint. And, again, it's shifted, right? I think the timeline's a little bit longer now. My first year here, we had 10 guys sign Division I early. That was 9 years ago. Now we're getting guys. We had 2 sign early this year. And we'll have, as long as things continue the way they are, we're going to have 6 to 8 more that'll sign late, but everything's just kind of drawn out a little bit more. So making sure that you stay relevant for longer, right? Being able to have our coaches' information out everywhere so that if they can't catch me, they can catch one of the assistants, right? Especially in the springtime, right? Because, things move at a rapid pace. It's like, hey, if you don't answer the phone now, your kid might miss out. So we make sure that the coaches have everything they need: transcripts, full game film, highlights, contact information, parent contact information, and we have it all ready to go so that when that kid's number does get called, right, we're ready to go. We're able to help with everything we can in the recruiting process.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And as you said, the landscape certainly is changing fast, and the ability to be adaptable at whatever level you're coaching. I don't care if it's where you're at in a post-grad world or whether you're talking about the colleges, whether you're talking about high school. Everybody's trying to figure out how to make this system work. And again, I think just by being prepared, you're putting yourself and your kids in the best position to be able to maximize the opportunities that are going to come their way. I want to ask you a final 2-part question, Ben. Part 1, when you think about the next year or two, what do you see as being your biggest challenge? And then the second part of the question, when you think about what you get to do every single day, what brings you the most joy? So your biggest challenge and then your biggest joy.
Loaded questions there. No, those are good ones. And it's funny. I think that the biggest challenges can really be summed up into just the unknown of what's going to happen with our game in the next 2 years. Not knowing what the eligibility limits are going to be, what the deal with the JUCO thing is, right? And I'm all for, players having those opportunities. But what it does is it's a trickle down effect for us. And we're behind the 8 ball if they make decisions, too late in the calendar. Right. So, that's probably, looking at the next 1 to 2 years, that would probably be the biggest challenge, just uncertainty, not just of things that are outside of our 4 walls, right? But, I want to take a second to brag on my assistants, right? Luke Rosinski and John Mebin, they're my brothers, right? I am so thankful I get to show up and work with them every single day, right? And I know that both of those guys are well on their way to being Division I assistants in the next 1 to 2 years, right? So, having to come to work every day and them not be here because they've gone on to bigger and better things, right? That I couldn't be prouder of them for. That's going to create quite a challenge at our level to try to replace those guys because they really are unreplaceable. But I do think that the biggest joy, I would say, outside of the fact that I'm able to walk to work every day and, I get to go home and see my wife and daughter every night, that's really rewarding. But, to be honest with you, one of the biggest joys I get is just walking into my office every single day. You have to walk up the steps. My office is on the 2nd floor and the hallway leading up to my office has the names of everyone that's played in our program since 1990-91, right? And you walk by those names every single day and you see yourself just looking at them from time to time. You'll pick a specific year and you'll go down and you'll look like, wow, that team in 2006 was loaded, right? And you sit there and you have a moment of realization that you're exactly where you need to be, right? You're at an incredible place that, has benefited me so much as an individual, right? That my biggest joy has been able to show up every single day and give back to the guys that we have in our program, give back to the guys that have played here before, that have coached here before, right? And then be able to give back to the school, right? Hargrave's an incredibly special place. So to show up to work 7 days a week and it not feel like a job, that's really, it brings me incredible joy every single day.
Yeah, nothing beats that. That's well said. When you can go to your job and it doesn't feel like work, man, you have won the lottery when that is the case, because not everybody, as we well know, not everybody gets to experience that. So that's awesome that's the way that you feel and the way you approach your day-to-day work, as you said. So before we get out, I want to give you a chance to share. How can people reach out to you, connect with you, find out more about your program, whether you want to share social media, email, website, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then after you do that, I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Yeah, absolutely. I am on social media. It might just be a lot of retweets and not a lot of individual posts. But you can find me on Twitter at Hargrave Hoops. And you can also reach out to me. Email is probably the best way to get in touch with me. My email would be Coach Veshi, Veshi, @gmail.com.
Ben, cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your schedule tonight to join us. Really appreciate it. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening. And we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks. Your first impression is everything when applying for a new coaching job. A professional coaching portfolio is the tool that highlights your coaching achievements and philosophies, and most of all, helps separate you and your abilities from the other applicants. The Coaching Portfolio Guide is an instructional, membership-based website that helps you develop a personalized portfolio. Each section of the Portfolio Guide provides detailed instructions on how to organize your portfolio in a professional manner. The guide also provides sample documents for each section of your portfolio that you can copy, modify, and add to your personal portfolio. As a Hoopheads Pod listener, you can get your Coaching Portfolio Guide for just $25. Visit coachingportfolioguide.com/hoopheads to learn more.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.